It's Thursday, and we have had a strange, wonderful, disturbing week. On Sunday, Jesus rode into Jerusalem with crowds lining the streets and shouting. It was an amazing experience, and we were so thrilled to be amongst the followers of this man. Finally, he was being recognized and acclaimed as Messiah, the Son of David. Are things going to turn around now? That was what we were thinking. For so long we had wanted him to assert himself, to make his identity known, to use his power to command attention. But mostly he had resisted and didn't seem to want to draw attention to himself at all most of the time. Worse still, he insisted on helping people and healing people, and we felt that there were really important things that he had to teach us. And so we were quite frustrated when people waylaid him and he spent time just listening to them and meeting their needs. We admired and we were moved by his great compassion. But sometimes it was a bit irritating that he got sidetracked so regularly. As Jesus entered Jerusalem, we were all exhilarated, such an atmosphere of celebration and excitement. Mind you, we also felt a bit anxious because Jesus had spoken of his betrayal and his death, and Jerusalem, we know, can be a dangerous place. But we hoped everything would work out, and this trip to the holy city would be a resounding success. And then, when we got into Jerusalem, Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers in the outer courts of the temple, and we saw a side of him that we hadn't seen very often. He was so angry. It was a very confrontational thing to do, and we feared that there would be serious repercussions. But that was just the start. There were various altercations with the religious scholars and Pharisees during the next few days. We wished Jesus would keep a low profile rather than antagonize these people so much. Also, Jesus spoke of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which upset many people, and even we, his disciples, were confused as to what he meant. And we thought, surely he can't be saying this. This wonderful temple, we set so much store by it. It's so important to Jewish people. Surely he doesn't mean literally that it's going to be destroyed. All in all, there was a sense of increasing hostility and tension, and we see that now in retrospect more than we did at the time. We were apprehensive, to say the least. Earlier today, Thursday, Jesus sent Peter and John to find a man carrying a water jar with instructions to prepare for a Passover meal. Every Passover, we Jews remember the night before our ancestors were liberated from slavery. Bitter herbs, unleavened bread, a lamb, fruit, and other things all have special meaning. But this Passover focuses not on the past, but on the present and the future. Now, Jesus draws our attention to a loaf of bread and a cup of wine. Near the end of the meal, he raises the bread and gives thanks for it. He says, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And then he raises a cup of wine and says, "This cup is the new covenant by my blood, which is poured out for you for the forgiveness of sins. Whenever you take this bread and drink from this cup, do so in memory of me." What does he mean? He seems to be saying he is going to die very soon, and that we should do this to remember him. The thought of his blood being poured out is horrifying, and he speaks of the bread as his body and the wine as his blood. The idea of eating human flesh and drinking human blood, let alone the flesh and blood of Jesus, sends shivers down our spines. Whilst we are still trying to process this, Jesus speaks about one of us betraying him. We are shocked and distressed. We don't really believe it. All of us are conscious of our weakness, but surely none of us would go that far as to betray Jesus. We all had our issues with some of what Jesus said and did. Sometimes we were mystified. Sometimes, I must admit, we were disappointed. Sometimes we got frustrated because he wasn't doing what we thought he'd do. But the idea of betraying Jesus is beyond the realm of possibility, surely. If this really does happen, as Jesus says, please God, don't let it be me. To get our minds off this profoundly disturbing stuff, we start talking amongst ourselves about which one of us is the greatest. That says a lot about us, I'm afraid. Jesus is talking about suffering and dying, and we're thinking about being important. It's a bit embarrassing if we think about it now. Jesus says Gentiles, meaning the Roman oppressors, are interested in status, but we must become servants. And we're not really that comfortable with that. And then, horror of horrors, he strips off his ordinary clothes and picks up a towel, pours water into a basin, and begins to wash the dirt off our dusty feet one by one. We are feeling so awkward and uncomfortable. If we didn't know him better, it would appear as though he was exposing us, because any one of us could have been the servant and washed the feet of everyone. To think that Jesus was the one who did it, and he was our teacher. But we know that Jesus always is utterly sincere in what he is doing. And perhaps as he picks up the towel and the basin and washes our feet, he wants to communicate a truth to us as powerfully as possible. Jesus loved using stories. He likes to tell parables, some of which we can't understand. And so this is very symbolic. This picking up a towel and a basin of water and washing feet. And he seems to be then giving us an example and urging us to stop being so proud and wanting people to serve us, and instead be ready to begin serving one another. And now he tells us to love one another as he has loved us. That's one thing we have never doubted, his love for us. Seldom has anyone communicated love like this man. And in fact, we've been convinced of his love for everyone that he has encountered, except, of course, the Pharisees and the religious teachers, the Sadducees, and people like that. I guess Jesus loved them too, but he just couldn't get through their thick skin. The original Passover celebration remembers being set free from slavery. This Passover celebration is all about being set free from the need to compete with one another. It's all about being set free from pride, being set free from thoughts of greatness and the need to prove ourselves. In a sense, it seems that Jesus is saying we have to become slaves. We have to become servants of one another. It's all about giving ourselves. It's all about caring for other people. Jesus then gives us this example of service by washing our feet. And then he tells us to remember him as the one who gives his life to the world. We have never really thought about this possibility before, and it does sound amazing. What he asks of us, ordinary people, is radical. It's revolutionary. Of course, it doesn't come naturally to us. We have to make a deliberate, conscious decision. I guess maybe eventually it'll come naturally. And how do we wash one another's feet? It seems so costly, so demanding. It seems very uncomfortable, and we're sure that other people will feel awkward if we do anything like this. But what does he really mean? I don't think he really means that we should literally wash one another's feet. How do we serve one another? What can we do? We have to train ourselves to see other people's needs. And then when we see those needs, take action instead of being preoccupied with our own needs. We have to work out how and when to get involved. We have to take other people seriously. We have to be attentive. We have to be sensitive. We have to really listen. We have to focus on the people we encounter and then perhaps feel a prompting to offer practical help if we can, when it's needed and when it's appropriate. Obviously, we're not supposed to be patronizing, and we're not supposed to make people dependent on us. But what we do is supposed to affirm them, and we're supposed to recognize their dignity so that they can lift up their heads and look people in the eye. So what we're supposed to be doing is not really all about doing good so that we feel good. It seems that what Jesus wants is that we should be quiet about it, that we should be secretive, surreptitious about the good that we do, and not do it out in the public. And so much of the time, Jesus has done things quietly out of the limelight, and that also we found surprising, but we got used to it. It seemed that Jesus was trying to avoid the drama, avoid a fuss, avoid drawing attention to himself, and clearly that's what he intends for us too, that we should not seek to be in the limelight. It will take us the rest of our lives to work out the implications of what Jesus does today. So we feel inspired, but a bit overwhelmed. We will need Jesus to be with us. Our heads are spinning. It has been a long, hectic day, and we don't really know what tomorrow will bring. We feel as though we are on a new journey in the midst of our anxiety about what might happen here with us to Jesus in Jerusalem. There's also something beginning to stir deep down. We're wondering about this new way that Jesus seems to have started. And yes, there is a kind of an excitement. Of course, we're wondering how we'll ever do it, but is it possible we could start something new? We have been bombarded with all sorts of conflicting thoughts and emotions. And this week has just been incredible. We cannot explain the myriad of emotions that we have felt, and at any one time we haven't been able to single out a particular emotion and say that defines that experience, because it's been mixed up all along: excited and proud and glad and happy for Jesus, and worried and concerned that Jesus was overstepping the mark, and afraid and feeling the tension in the air, and wondering about the Pharisees and the political leaders. And there's so much going on. It will be good to get through this and to get safely out the other side, and then see how our lives can change, so that we are really practicing the principles that Jesus practices, and that he seems to want us to practice. He's tried so hard to inculcate a different way of thinking inside of us. And maybe it's beginning to work.